Or
All
the
right, I'm going to bring
Grizz.
your board back up here because I do have a couple of questions, and my sort of
Yeah.
mind goes to high-low when I'm looking at
Hmm.
stuff like this. And I'm not a draft expert. I don't pay a lot of attention to this. So all I get to see is a lot of people's boards. And the first thing I notice about this is a couple of guys that are one higher than I've seen sort of as quote-unquote consensus and two lower. And I want to start with the lower guys.
Sure.
First one I want to start out with here, and I know you already know where I'm going with one of them, but we're saving him for next. First one's Reed Sheppard.
Yeah.
Reed
Yeah.
Sheppard at 10, and he's been consensus pretty much top 6, top 5 guy, if not even higher than that. What's up with you having him as low as 10 on your board?
Yeah, this is one where I would adjust. I would probably move him up to either 8 or 7 now if I had to redo this. The big worry for me was the size. And the more I watch him, the more I think about the size. 6'2" isn't awful, but to me, he's always going to be a solid backup. I just do not see the path for him being a high-end starter for a good team. He might be a starter for a bad team, and that's fine, but it'll be probably part of the reason why they're bad is he's starting for them. But I like him a lot, and he gets the Kentucky bump. And I'm more forgiving with him than I am with Dillingham because both of them came off the bench. And I was worried about Reed defensively. And probably the biggest reason why I'd bump him up higher now is because I've seen more defensive playmaking stuff and more athleticism than I thought on first watch or seeing it live. And so that's why I would probably move him up. It's probably not fair to have him at 10. So, yeah, that's a good call on that one.
That's fair. And I want you to tell me if I'm right or wrong on this. When I think
Sure.
of Reed Sheppard, I think of every team has a need for shooting.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who you are. Every single team has a need for shooting. And that obviously includes the Grizz. Clearly, with the way three-point shooting went last year, the Grizz need that. That being said, when I see his name, even if he is there at 9, assuming the Grizz stay at 9, I think there are guys that are better help now fit players that are going to be there at 9. Would you say yes, or you think Reed Sheppard's there at 9? Grizz, you got to pull the trigger on this guy.
I think it depends on who went above him, like who is a surprise people, because him falling at 9 would be a surprise, I think. So that means a couple people probably leaped him, I would expect. So it'd be kind of depending on who's left. But Reed Sheppard is kind of like, we have this problem with Tyus, right? Like it's just a small, undersized guard. Him and Ja were playing together, didn't really work. Tyus can shoot threes. I don't know if Reed has the dribble drive floater like Tyus does, or is the passing quality. But to me, like if he's TJ McConnell with a 3-point shot, like that is an NBA player, right? Like that's a guy that's in the league, multiple contracts, 8 to 10 years. At number 3, would you say, well, that was a great career or bust? That depends on, if you want to argue that. But if you last passed your first contract in the first place as a rookie, like you've had a great career. Because every year in this draft, you get approximately 20 NBA players who make it past their first rookie contract. Like 20 guys out of 60. So you're trying to just find somebody who will stick. And Reed, the more I watch him with the defensive stuff, I think he'll actually stick. So if he's there at 9, would I be against it? No. But it would depend on who else was on the board. Like if it was a situation where it was Reed dropped for some reason and it was Holland was also on the board, Ron Holland was also on the board, I would pick Holland first just because of size athleticism. But Reed does hit a more immediate need in just the actual shooting part where Holland does not right away.
You killed one of my future segues because the guy who I was going to say is my example of who's on there is Ron Holland. Like that was the guy I was going to say if it's Ron Holland or Reed Sheppard.
Yeah.
Who would you go with? Because again, it's positional fit, right? It's positional need, what you have. And I, for one, can't believe that there's Grizzlies fans out there saying we don't need any more wings after the Grizzlies' history of wings. Like,
yeah,
every wing with potential, bring them on. Yeah. If they, GG, Vince, all of them work out, all the better. But on the topic of size, though, the other guy you have low here, I'm going to bring your board back up, is one I think is going to stand out to a lot of people. Yeah, and that is number 14.
Yeah.
Donovan Clingan.
I was
And
wondering
you
how
and
long
I
it was
have
going to take.
actually,
Yeah.
as I say, we've talked about this a little bit, but I haven't really gotten your
Yeah.
actual reasoning on it, right? I think we've
Right.
noticed some of the same things, but that's way lower than a lot of people have them. And I know most Grizz fans out there, unless they're Zach Edey fans, are saying if Klingan's there at 9, you've got to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
But you have him at 14, so I would not think you agree. What's your reasoning on that?
No, I'm just not big on a lot of the bigs, honestly. And honestly, I wouldn't be high on Sar if it wasn't for just the potential ceiling, right? Like, I think with Klingan, I think he is what he is. Like, he's shooting all these threes and combine, all these drills, and everybody gets this idea. Oh, and he's saying, I can shoot threes. I shot threes in college. He's selling himself because this is contract money. Like, the ninth pick for us, I think, is a $5 million a year contract. The higher he gets, it bumps by $500,000 or $1 million. Like, he's trying to solidify in the top 3. He wants a $7 million a year contract right out of the gate, right? So you're going to sell whatever you think teams want to hear. And teams want to hear that not only can you protect the rim, but you can also shoot threes, right? He is very similar to Walker Kessler to me. And Walker Kessler became a backup for a 31-win Utah Jazz team, right? Like, Walker Kessler does something well, which is protect the rim, but that's really about it. And Clingan is kind of like that for me. Now, everybody's trying to sell you on the passing chops and the screening and all that kind of stuff. Oh, he has good footwork. I just flat out do not see the footwork part of it. He looks clumsy to me. He does not finish well. The ball's kind of always flipping around. And that's just not someone that I'm looking for the Grizzlies. And anytime, like, just kind of a draft rule for me is if he's a big man and he's not elite, I'm not taking him in the top 14. Like, I'm not taking him in the lottery. And so you just look back at the draft history of guys who were good at one thing, not elite, and then they said they could do something else, right? They never worked out. Like, I think Mo Bamba said the same thing. Like, he could protect the rim. He was big. Oh, also I can shoot. I didn't get to show that at Florida State or wherever Mo Bamba played at. He comes in and he bounces around the league. He's a 12th man on every roster. Not saying that Clingan will be that, but I just do not view Clingan as a guy where if he fell at 9, you have to take him. You cannot consider anyone else. I just do not believe that with the bigs in this draft. You put Clingan in last year's draft, he's going 25th past that. Like, he's not a top 20 pick last year, in my opinion.
Right. And I think that's a big thing for me is he can screen. He can rebound if he's in the paint. And he can protect the paint, right? He can protect the rim if he's at the rim.
Yeah.
My big thing is the same thing you saw. I don't trust the footwork. He doesn't look light on his feet at all, which he's 7 foot a million. I wouldn't expect him to be super light on his feet. But when you look at the NBA and you're dealing with guards like De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton, Jalen Brunson, Ja Morant, I don't see you being able to defend the paint as well as you were in college unless that footwork goes a long way.
Yeah.
Regardless if you can set screens or not, right? Because you're just going to get murdered and played off the court when you go into drop coverage.
I think he's already had 2 foot issues, and he has kind of an awkward running style. Like, I would not think, I don't want to project, and I don't want to say a guy's going to get injured, right? I just don't want to do that. But his running style is not a fluid running style where you would say, that looks natural, right? Like, he can hold up for 82 games plus playoffs. I just don't see that from him, right? Like, I see him as a max 60, 65 games a year kind of guy, hopefully. And he can get played off the floor very easily depending on the matchup that you have in the playoffs. So for me, it's not a slam dunk.
No, that's fair. I've got a couple of bigs that I like a lot more than the 2 big name bigs in here, but I know Daniel wants to get to the next segment, so I won't bother us into that yet. But I do have one high guy I want to hit on before we get into the next segment. So appreciate you being patient, Daniel. I know it's been a rough day, and you probably need a drink, to be honest. But bring up the board one more time. The main guy that's high on here that stands out to me that I love because he reminds me of a guy we just saw really, really recently in the Eastern Conference Finals is Isaiah Collier.
Yeah.
This is a guy who I see and I'm like, top 5 pick? I don't know. That might be a reach. I see 0% chance of him not finding a way to succeed in the NBA, personally.
Yeah, the thing that I was really high on Collier, which I might move him back a little because, depending on how you feel about the combine, I do think measurements matter a little bit, especially just for more positional size, right? And Collier was kind of billed as a 6'5" point guard, which I was like, oh, good grief. This guy's 6'5", and the rim pressure is incredible. He's probably even better at Castle than that. Like his finishing, the touch, all of it. And then it got measured and it was actually 6'2" or 6'2 and a half, maybe. I'm not sure of the exact number. And so that was kind of like, that kind of messes with it. And you're like, okay, 6'2 and a half to 6'5. Like, what's the big difference? 2.5 inches in the NBA is a pretty big deal for a guard, right? Like, and so I just preseason, he was the number one guy coming into this class and he got injured. USC sucked. He was playing alongside Boogie Ellis, the Bronny James kind of thing. Boogie needed the ball a lot. So it's kind of like the Holland effect. He got injured and everybody soured on him. And I just don't get why you sour on a guy. It's why this thing with Toppage, right? Like why I keep him in the top 5 is, yeah, he has a half torn ACL, but the high end ceiling of what he is does not immediately drop him from 3 to 12 for me. And it's the same thing with Collier. Like this is a preseason number 1 guy. Now he's in the 20s because he was injured for half the season and USC sucked. So now him individually as a player, he sucks. That kind of stuff never makes sense to me. So I still really like Collier. I don't know if he's your starting point guard. He's probably going to have a first year if he's on a really bad team and he gets to start right. Like he's going to have a freshman year, not freshman, but rookie year like Scoot Henderson, right? Like Scoot really struggled this year and couldn't shoot the ball. I think he'll have that kind of year, but the long-term vision of what he could be, I think it's an NBA player.
Fair enough. I think he'll succeed in one way or another. I don't think starting point guard is the path I see, but I think he'll for sure succeed somewhere. If you see guys like Aaron Nesmith, I'm like, he's going to succeed the same way Aaron Nesmith does at the least.
His talent is starter ceiling. Will he get there? Will the shot be reliable enough to be that? Probably not.